Hi all, this is Once and Future Gamer and welcome to another Pokemon challenge. Ho ho ho, the festive season is here. Last time was a Halloween run as I sought to see if I could beat Pokemon Fire Red with a single Zubat. Today though, we sort of get festive as I head to Alola, the most Christmassy of all Pokemon regions clearly, and we bring the chill as I see if I can beat Pokemon Ultra Sun with a single Alolan Vulpix. Okay, this isn't my first rodeo, it is my fourth Vulpix challenge, so we have an idea what we're working with. The base stats are the same as the Cantonian Vulpix. We have a 299 base stat total with good special stats and speed. We have less than ideal health and defence, so this could get interesting. We are pure ice type, which is not always great as we have 4 weaknesses to fighting, rock, steel and fire, no immunities and we only resist ice. With those weaknesses, you might immediately spot some potential roadblocks in this game. The learn set via level up is okay. We do get plenty of special moves, but barring Hex and extra sensory, most of them are ice moves. Which, don't get me wrong, learning Ice Beam via level up is nice, but I think anything that resists ice might be somewhat problematic. Via TM, we don't really get much. About the only really noteworthy move is Dark Pulse, which isn't until the 4th island. There are move tutors, but again, not really anything truly noteworthy, and I also don't fancy doing the surfing mini-games. The rules are on the screen throughout. Thanks for watching folks. As always, if you do enjoy what you see, then like, subscribe and ring that bell. Let's get this on. I used the Universal Pokemon Randomizer to replace Popplio with Alolan Vulpix, so that I can do the whole run with it. The rival picks the starter weak to yours in this game, so by changing Popplio, How will take Litten, which is the hardest for us to fight, and that's not even close. Fire Dark is like our kryptonite with the moves we get. As I've done at the previous 3 times I've used Vulpix, I nicknamed the Pokemon Molder and we can move on. Molder has the hasty nature, so more speed and less defence. More speed is nice, but I can't help feeling the lack of defence may hurt us later on. I mean, especially when you look at the joyous fights we have upcoming. We've also got Snow Cloak as an ability, so increased evasion in hail. That may be useful somewhere, I can't think where, but somewhere perhaps. Unless we get the hidden ability, it was always ever going to be Snow Cloak as an ability. I mean, I wonder if I can use the hail to break sturdies as well as getting an evasion boost. I do a little bit of training because there is a rival battle upcoming and we will have to fight How and his Litten. The thing to be concerned about is that we don't get any moves that aren't resisted by the fire type, so we're going to have to hit it a lot more times. It will be good to get some EV training in. I just wish there was something that could raise our special attack EVs in the area, but I think we might be out of luck in that regard. I think we're going to need to get very strong very quickly. There's some How fights, there's a Lemur, there's the Totem Pokemon, and there will be Howler at the end of it. A fighting type specialist, we are screwed. I do the How fight, something becomes immediately apparent. I am pretty lucky because if he was a competent trainer, I'd have probably lost this fight. Powder Snow does not do a lot of damage, which is unfortunate, but we are lucky because Litten has Ember and he doesn't spam it. We'd probably have been knocked out in 3 hits if he had. We get hit with 2 scratches, which puts our health low, which is worrying. We hit some Powder Snows and we then get the freeze on Litten. It never defrosts through the battle, so we can just keep hitting Powder Snows and eventually we do bring it down. But that was way too close. I'm terrified for Article 4 and end us with Ember, but it never happens. We have to rescue Lily and Nebby next from a Spearow, but that's not an issue. We can end flying types all day long. That Spearow is not going to be the biggest obstacle in the run, put it that way. Sometime later, we have the second battle with How at the festival, and he's added a Pichu to his team now. I don't think this is going to make him any easier, as he begins with that Pichu, and although we can quickly take it out with a pair of Powder Snows, we do get hit with Tail Whip, which, far from ideal. However, Litten comes out next, we go for a Tail Whip. I have an idea of combining that with Ice Shard, since our attack stats are the same at the moment. But we get burned with an Ember that does nearly 1/3 of our health and wipes out any chance of winning, as we are taking passive damage now. And although we do drop Litten below the half health mark, we soon go down to a combination of scratches and burn damage. Thankfully, we don't have to win the fight to progress, as grinding is getting somewhat unpleasant right now, but we can move on with the story, and soon we'll be heading towards the trainer school. The next major battle, I believe, will be Alola, so we'll need to power up ahead of that. Alola can actually be quite tricky. He has a Smeargle who can be rough. It's not a sentence that should ever really be uttered, but here we are. Anyway, on the subject of that battle with Alola, let's do this. We have to beat some Team Skullgrunts first before we can move on to him. He begins with Yungoos. We miss an Icy Wind straight off the bat and then get hit with Leer. We do hit Icy Wind at the second attempt before losing some health to tackle. However, we do take it out with Powder Snow. Smeargle is second. It's sometimes a tricky opponent and hurts us with tackle, but we can two-shot with Icy Wind to give us the win, and we can move on. The next obstacle is the Totem Pokemon. In this instance, the Totem Gumshoes, and I don't think this will be too bad. There are Totem Pokemon I'm infinitely more worried about battling. One of them on the next island in the Alolan Marowak, but that's a problem for the future. Anyway, the fight begins and we go for Confuse Ray. It hits us with Scary Face before summoning a Yungoos. This works out though because Icy Wind hits 2 targets. We damage Gumshoes and one-shot Yungoos. We get hit with another Scary Face. Gumshoes never attacks us, just going for a third Scary Face, but 2 more Icy Winds take it down and we can move on. That was actually ridiculously simple and I'm all for it. After some stuff with Nebby, the next major battle is with How. I'm fighting everyone I can because I know what's coming. How begins with Litten. We have a 10 level advantage, so we should be fine. We land an Icy Wind, doing over half its health in damage and forcing it to eat a berry. But we get hit with Ember, which we actually do shrug off, so that's nice. We hit another Icy Wind, but get hit with Leer, but we can go for the knockout and take it out with Powder Snow. Noibat is second. You might be shocked to hear that's a one-shot with Powder Snow. And last is Pikachu. And we one-shot with Icy Wind to give us a win. That might be our last competitive win for a while now because we've got Hala next. I would like to say I'm exaggerating of how difficult Hala is in this effort, but I'm really not. I make my first try at level 27, 12 levels higher than his opening Pokemon in Machop. And the only reason our first effort goes the way it does is because Machop goes to Focus Energy, which lets us two-shot with Icy Wind. A lot of efforts we were simply just one-shot with Revenge. It doesn't matter on this effort though, as Crabrawler simply comes in and one-shots us from full health with its Z move. Yeah, that's quite brutal. I knew that was going to happen. We're not even close to one-shotting Crabrawler without a crit. And even if we make it past Crabrawler, there's a Makuhita to get through, who has thick fat, so our ice moves aren't going to be as effective. Well, I figure I'll get some more levels. Absolute worst case scenario, we learn Extrasensory at level 31, and I think that would make this fight very easily. I make some more tries at level 28 after a lot of grinding, and things don't go particularly better. We're still getting battered about. At least, there are some efforts where we do get to Makuhita, but that, unfortunately, has a Sand attack. And there's one effort where we are one hit away from victory, but miss we do, and it's another loss. This is where that reduced defence stat is becoming problematic. Eventually, at level 30, we get this effort, and it comes as a huge relief. We make the long walk to the stage to fight Hala, and he begins with the Machop. We one-shot with Aurora Beam, so we did well there. It's not always a one-shot, I don't think it's a damage roll. We also crit our Aurora Beam on Crabrawler and take it down in one shot, so we are not going to get nailed with a Z move, which is nice. Makuhita lands Fake Out and does some decent damage to us, making us flinch. We land Confuse Ray but get hit with 2 rounds of Arm Thrust for decent damage. Hala uses a full heal. We do about a third of its health in damage with Aurora Beam before landing another Confuse Ray. It hurts itself in confusion and we take it down with Aurora Beam. Thank goodness! I'm finally on my way to the next island and we are forced to do a spot of Mantine surfing, which I'd rather not, but there's no option to get out of it, unfortunately, and believe me, I tried. I'm not a huge fan of it, but we have upcoming battles against Dexio, I think it is. There's a battle with How, there's a battle with Gladion, and then 3 totem battles in a row, 2 of which might actually turn out to be quite tricky. I know the Marowak will be rough. I think the Araquanid might be tricky too, as we won't have a fantastic way to damage it. I do battle Dexio on the next island. It's not a major fight, and I don't even know if you have to win to progress. I don't even know if the fight is mandatory. I sort of wandered into it accidentally. But anyway, he begins with Mime Jr. and we one-shot with Hex. I am keeping Hex for the Alolan Marowak at the very least. Espeon is a 2-shot with Hex, surviving the first one on red health. We do get hit with a Psybeam, but we can shrug it off fairly easily. I always like this next How battle, it sticks in the memory. I think he even mentions it in the dialogue that it is like a Wild West showdown. It's definitely one of How's more memorable moments. He begins with Torracat, and we do over half its health in damage with Hex, while we get countered with Lick. Another Hex puts it on low red health, but we get hit with another Lick. I am lucky we don't get paralysed as we take it out on the next turn. Pikachu is a one-shot with Aurora Beam when it comes out second, and third is Noibat, who goes down to an Aurora Beam. Eevee hits us with 2 quick attacks because it can survive Aurora Beam, which not ideal, but a second one takes it down. We learn Extra Sensory at the end of the battle. While travelling, we learn that Mulder has the Dark type hidden power, which I don't think goes down as entirely useful, but we will have to keep that in mind for sure. We have a Gladion battle soon after as he's harassing How, and while I'm entirely on board with him doing that, he soon turns his attention to me and I have to do something about it. He begins with what looks like Zubat and we fire an Aurora Beam into it to reveal that it's Zorua and we one-shot. Second is the real Zubat and it doesn't deal well with an Aurora Beam any kind of better and we one-shot it. Last is Type Null, it tanks Aurora Beam quite well and hits Tackle for decent damage. Another Aurora Beam puts it on red health and drops its attack. We weather another Tackle attack and we take it out with Extra Sensory for a win. We have Lana's trial next and getting to the totem isn't really a problem, but the actual fight with the Araquanid turns out to be quite rough. As it is bulky, we don't have a decent way of hurting it and we take a lot of damage from its attacks. Plus, one of those attacks is Leech Life and that recovers health. We lose a few attempts at level 32 and I retreat off to level up. It takes so much grinding and eventually at level 37 I get an effort on the Araquanid that looks like this. We start with Confuse Ray to try and confuse it, but we get hit with Leech Life. It summons Jupider and we one-shot with Extra Sensory. Araquanid shakes off Confusion and hits another Leech Life. About the only plus is that we found leftovers while grinding. We use Confuse Ray, it hurts itself in Confusion, which is nice, before we land an Extra Sensory and Araquanid hurts itself in Confusion once again. We are having all the luck in this effort that we didn't have in the previous 30 attempts. It summons Masquerain, but we one-shot that with an Ice Beam. We do then get hit with a Leech Life though from Araquanid, but our luck continues as we land Extra Sensory on Araquanid and get the first flinch in those 30 attempts. See, luck. Although we do get hit with another Leech Life, 2 more Extra Sensory attacks are enough to take it down and give us the win. We have a battle with the Ultra Recon squad on the way to the next trial, but they only use a Poipole, and it doesn't stand up to an Ice Beam from Vulpix. I didn't know if this was Dragon type or not at this point, but it doesn't matter. Fun fact, one of the first Gen 7 runs I ever thought about doing was this game with Poipole. I don't know why I've never revisited that. Maybe it's something to consider for the future. I'm walking up towards the Fire Totem battle now and I'm going through this grass. I'm going to get really used to this grass because I have a feeling I'll be doing a stack of levelling here in the very near future. That should tell you something about the level of confidence I'm rocking about how well we're going to do against the Marowak. And it turns out my concerns are valid, as when we face the totem Alolan Marowak at level 38, we're still more than capable of being one-shot by Flame Wheel, even though we've got that 16 level advantage, which I would say is more than troubling. The Salazzle that shows up during the fight is also potentially dangerous. I train up to level 44. This may seem like overkill, but I don't think so. I think we are going to get walled again soon after this fight, even if we win. So, probably not from the grass totem, but Olivia might be rough. Anyway, it takes a few efforts, but eventually we get this one. We land Hex on the first turn and do over half its health in damage. We survive Flame Wheel on a quarter of our health, and on the next turn we take the Marowak out with another Hex. We do have to tank a Flame Burst from Salazzle, but our special defence is better than our physical and we barely survive it. I think our leftovers saved us there, and we take her out with extra sensory. Like I said, I don't think the grass totem is going to be an issue. I don't even think the Plumeria fight is going to be a problem. I have had some issues with her in runs in the past. Olivia could go either way though. Her team doesn't resist ice, so if we can land some one-shots with Ice Beam, we should be fine. Then it'll be the Aether Foundation and the Nihilego battle, then it'll be How on the next island. But that fight's not a mandatory victory. I don't believe if that's the case anyway. I'm moderately low-key worried about the Togedemaru totem, I know that. The totem Lurantis is the next major battle, and well, I face off with this thing and it's about time we got an easy one of these fights after the last two, so we blast it with Ice Beam and we take it out in a single hit to give us the win, and we can move on. I'm walking towards Olivia next, and there is going to be a Plumeria fight between now and then, but I can't possibly think this is going to be a hard battle. I could be wrong. She starts with Golbat and we one-shot with Ice Beam. Okay, cool, neat. And then on the next turn we face off with Salandit and we one-shot with extra sensory. Okay, easy. I think Olivia is going to be way harder though, and I prove out to be right, as fights tend to follow a very similar pattern. She begins with Anorith and we can one-shot with Ice Beam. I do have the Never Melt Ice on because I don't think health recovery is going to save us in this fight. We can one-shot Lily then, but the problem is Lycanroc survives Ice Beam and one-shots her with her Z move, which is definitely not ideal because, unlike most rock moves, I don't believe this can miss. I figure that with a crit or a freeze we can probably do better against Lycanroc. I make half a dozen attempts and then I decide that I'm going to take a different tactic, that I'm far more likely to get a flinch than a crit or a freeze. And so, when it comes to the battle with the Lycanroc, we start by going for extra sensory instead. And there aren't many moments before we do get the flinch with extra sensory, and then can take it out with Ice Beam on the next turn. I'd probably have thrown my controller across the room if it had survived Ice Beam on a sliver there. Going towards the Aether Paradise, we have the battle with Nihilego, but it's more a mini-boss than anything else. I wouldn't consider it a proper battle. It only really uses Venoshock on us, and given that we have A, decent special defence, and B, aren't poisoned, we can soon bring it down with extra sensory and Ice Beam attacks, so that wasn't too bad at least. We also have a How fight when we get to the next island, but take a look at how this one goes. Not well is the answer, as he begins with Torracat, who now has a Z move, a fire type Z move, and is a physical attacker, and we have defences like tissue paper. We try to flinch with extra sensory and we immediately get one shot by the Z move. Well, we don't have to win this fight to progress anyway. Unlike the next one anyway, I am not looking forward to the totem Togedemaru because I think we are going to lose a lot of attempts to both this and the Mimikyu on the next one. I think I'm going to replace Confuse Ray with Hail at some point, just purely for the evasion boost and the chip damage. I train up and make a try at level 51 and it goes reasonably badly, even in the Hail, as although we can tank one Iron Head from Togedemaru, we can't tank a second one, and when the Skarmory emerges into the mix, that makes things even more complex. I do make several attempts, but it becomes very clear that this isn't happening at this level, so I retreat off and train up. I return at level 55 and make some more tries, but again, things just aren't happening. We don't get a fantastic way of hurting steel types, especially if they resist ice. There is Hex, it is neutral damage, but like I said, not a fantastic move. Resisted Stab Ice Beam probably does more damage, unless the opponent is weak against Ghost, which Togedemaru is not. I make some tries at level 60 just to see if it is more doable at this level, and it turns out it is not. But at level 65, I get an effort that looks like this. If Togedemaru begins with Spiky Shield, it's a good thing. We go for Hail and watch it use that move. Skarmory is summoned, we hit the Ice Beam on said Skarmory and it only survives due to Sturdy, but the Hail will take it out. Unfortunately, it sets up Tailwind before falling. We get hit with Iron Head from Togedemaru. An Ice Beam is blocked by Spiky Shield, but I'll take that. We can recover a bit more health for the rest of the fight. It misses another Iron Head. We then get the freeze on Togedemaru. Somehow, while frozen, it eats a berry and summons Dedenne. Dedenne hits Super Fang. We put Togedemaru on red health with another Ice Beam before we then finally take it out. Dedenne does paralyse us with Discharge but misses Super Fang and we drop it with an Ice Beam. Again, thank goodness. That relief is very quickly lost as we lose several times to Guzma in Marley Park and I have to go off and train to beat him. Yeah, I'm losing quite a bit of hope already that this run is going to be doable, having to be this high of a level and we're not even off the third island yet. Anyway, at level 70 we get this run. He goes for Galissapod. We get clattered for big damage with First Impression, a huge issue in this fight, but we land 2 extra sensory attacks and get a high damage roll on the second turn that takes it out. That's a relief. Masquerain is second, we one-shot with Ice Beam, so at least that's out of the way. Walking towards the next trial, might as well talk about what's ongoing with the channel. Well, on the one hand, it might not look like much. I did play rather a lot of Legends ZA when it came out, I enjoyed it and was uploading a lot of that to the channel. Hence the reason that this is the first challenge since the Halloween one. Plus, being busy and I needed to recover some. Next challenge will be the New Year one and I'm going to see if I can beat Pokemon Heart Gold with a single Gibble. Then, the first one of 2026 will be the 150th challenge and I have sort of an idea for that. As always, any ideas for future challenges, head to the comment section down below or follow the links in the description to Twitter or Discord. We have the Mimikyu Totem battle next, and guess what? This goes badly as we get messed up by the Totem Pokemon. So, a few things. 1. I hoped Hail would break the disguise. It does not. 2. Snow Cloak didn't come into effect the way I would like. And 3. I can't really ignore the summoned Bayonet to take out Mimikyu since it has both Will-O-Wisp and Curse. Mimikyu keeps messing us up with Play Rough, which despite the Snow Cloak and Hail, never missed. Annoying. I'll make a few more efforts and then train up some more. I'm on using rare candies now, by the way. I figured out how to do it on Citra. Yeah, levelling up at this point would have just been absolutely painful. We still don't get any misses from Mimikyu as the battle begins, and part of me wonders if that Omni Boost it gets at the start raises its accuracy to the point that it is actually unlikely to miss. Food for thought. There is one effort where we do take Bayonet and Mimikyu out, but lose to Jellicent, who has Nightshade. I eventually use more rare candies and move our level up to 80, and we take an effort. I don't bother with Hail, just go into Hex and break Mimikyu's disguise. We take damage from Play Rough and Bayonet is summoned. We take down Bayonet with Hex and take another Play Rough from Mimikyu. We get dropped onto red health but can take Mimikyu down with 2 more Hex attacks, and that leaves us one-on-one with Bayonet, who only goes to Water Pulse, which does not do much damage. We can then one-shot Jellicent with Hex to give us the win. We have a quick battle with Plumeria next, but it isn't really an issue as we can use Ice Beam to shoot Golbat down, an extra sensory to take Salazzle out. So, this was a mini-boss at best and not really a difficult one. Weird, I've had some runs where I struggle with her. Then again, we are faster than Golbat, so as long as we can one hit, we don't have to worry about being confused. Upcoming, we have Guzma, we have Gladion, we have Nanu, Guzma again, and then Luzamine. Now the last one is at least an optional win, but either way, it's going to be a pretty worrying set of opponents. Our moveset and stats are killing us. You can have one or the other, but not both, and levels can only take you so far. I definitely have a feeling we're not going to win this run, but all we can do is try. If we can make it past Ultra Necrozma, I'd argue that's a victory. If we can make it to the Elite Four, that's the cherry on the cake, but I have a feeling that would at the very least be as far as we'd go. We saw what happened in the last How battle. I can't see us dealing with Incineroar, but even then, I think we'd struggle to get past either Mullane or Olivia anyway, so yeah. I have the fight with Guzma, and this actually goes better than expected. He begins with Golisopod, and although we get smacked with First Impression, we do slightly less than half its health in damage with Extra Sensory. Another Extra Sensory puts it on red health before it evacuates the battlefield, and Pinsir comes in. We blast it with Ice Beam, we freeze it with Ice Beam, and take it out with Extra Sensory. Masquerain is a one-shot with Ice Beam. Golisopod comes back out. We get put on red health with First Impression, and we take it out with Extra Sensory. We have a Gladion fight shortly afterwards as he attacks us in a fit of PK, but we're more than a match for him. He begins with Golbat, and we blast it down with an Ice Beam for a one-shot. Type Null is second. We blast it with Ice Beam and take it out in one hit, revealing it to be Zoroark. That goes down easily enough. The real Type Null misses Crush Claw and gets two shots with Ice Beam, giving us the win over him, and we can move towards the next major fight. Next is Nanu, and he encounters and battles us at the harbour. Sableye is first and claps us with Fake Out pretty quickly, but it doesn't do a huge amount of damage, even with our meagre physical defence. We strike an Ice Beam that does about 3/4 of its health before we get hit with Power Gem, which, not a huge issue really. Nanu heals his Sableye and we take it down with 2 more Ice Beams. Persian is second, we get hit with Fake Out again before we blast it with Ice Beam on the next turn. We get hit with a Power Gem but take it down with Ice Beam. I'm quite glad that wasn't the Z move because that could have been problematic. Krokorok is a one shot with Ice Beam. 3 Grand Trials down, which is something. We run into somewhat of a brick wall versus Guzma and Aether Paradise, as his Golisopod's First Impression messes us up, and to make things even worse, his Vikavolt has a Steel type move that doesn't do a lot of good for us when we're already hurting. I eventually have to raise our level to compete with him, and eventually at level 90 we get this run. Golisopod smacks us with First Impression. We get badly hurt by it, but Extra Sensory makes him fit to lead the battle as we take out over half its health. Pinsir has Stone Edge, which is a death sentence if it hits us, but we're able to one-shot with Ice Beam. We blast Vikavolt with Ice Beam and it survives, but we get the freeze and can take it out on the next turn. Masquerain is a one-shot with Ice Beam, and last is Golisopod again. We get clattered with First Impression, but can take it down with Extra Sensory. That was rough, and I fear we're running out of levels to the amount of game that's left. And spoiler alert, this is from the recording point where I already know the run's played out. You might notice there's not a lot of video left. We have the notoriously difficult in single Pokemon runs Luzamine battle next, and this is actually surprising how this plays out. She begins with Clefable, and we immediately blast it with Ice Beam. It survives and hits Hyper Voice, we weather it well and take it out on the next turn. Next is Lopunny, it survives Ice Beam and hits Thunder Punch for surprisingly little damage, but we can then take it out with Extra Sensory. Beware is a 2-shot with Extra Sensory, it misses Takedown, which might have hurt if it had connected, but with that down we're on to Lilligant, who we one-shot with Ice Beam. Last is Milotic. I put the hail up for chip damage and then we start lashing it with Extra Sensory attacks. We do get hit with some Icy Wind attacks, but we can take those all day. Milotic does hit Dragon Pulse and Hydro Pump, but they don't do a huge amount of damage and it's too little too late by the time she does move on to those moves, and we soon take Milotic out. I think that's the first time I've beaten her in a solo run. 3rd time lucky then. So, the next major fight, I believe, is Necrozma, which might well turn out to be horrible. That could be the ending point of the run. I'm wrong, there's a Totem Komodo before that. You might think, oh, Dragon-type, you've got Ice Beam, you'll be fine. I will point out, it does get an Omni Boost at the start of the fight, and it also has a Stab Drain Punch, which is going to hurt us a lot, so that's something to keep in mind. Should make it past it, but I have concerns. If we make it past Ultra Necrozma, there'll be Mina's Gauntlet, Mina herself, and then Hapu. I think if we make it past Necrozma, the rest of the trial should not be a problem. We should beat Gladion outside Victory Road, but I have doubts if we'll make it through all the Elite Four though. The Totem Komodo is brutal. My earlier prediction about Drain Punch messing us up is spot on. It can two-shot us easily, plus it summons Caesar a lot of the time, who has a priority Bullet Punch to take us out. There does come a point where we can one-shot Komodo, but we've raised our level to max and we are sporting a pair of choice specs to increase our special attacks. So, other than items, I have no tricks left. This is as strong as we get. Ultra Necrozma then. Here's the rub. Without a choice scarf, we're not even faster and we just get one shot by Smart Strike, which is quite irritating. Plus, Smart Strike never misses, so that means most of our evasion tactics would be useless. With the choice scarf, we can outspeed, but we can't one-shot without a crit or a freeze. I figure this is the end of the run, right up until the point where we fire an Ice Beam off, we get the freeze on the Necrozma, and we can follow up with a second Ice Beam to bring it down. The run carries on a little longer. Or does it? I only realised this after the fact. So, when I did the rare candy cheat, it spawned in a lot of extra items, 950 of each of them. And only after the fact that I used it did I realise that you can't actually get the choice scarf until post-game. So, technically, that victory over Ultra Necrozma is void, because that was arguably the only reason I managed to get the win. So, with that in mind, I'm drawing a line under the run here. So, I didn't think we'd win this run anyway. I figured we might make it to the Elite Four and take wins over Kahili and possibly Acerola, but Mullane and Olivia might have been rough asks. But, as I said earlier, I definitely do not think we'd have beaten How and his Incineroar. So, that's a wrap. 148 challenges in, and this is the first one I failed to win. That's quite sobering. Thanks for watching, folks. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Join me next time for the next challenge. I'll see you then. Take care, have a great day. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. However you want to celebrate. If you do celebrate, if you don't, however you want to do it. Anyway, bye.